The lights go out, a hush falls, and the spotlight flashes on with a clunk. Without any further warning, a pair of ponies twitch aside the curtain and take to the stage, both dressed in formal evening gowns. Good evening, every pony. My name is Twilight Sparkle. And I'm Pinkie Pie. We're here tonight because the author of our show wants to greet all of us, you, warmly, and thank you for giving our performance your time and attention. He's been working hard on the story for a few years now. Not really, mostly for the last few months. He kinda wasn't sure there needed to be a sequel. Even the best horror stories haven't these days, though. So why not? Ahem. He's been working hard, but he's aware not every pony will have had the pleasure of experiencing something sweet to bite, so they may not be prepared for something sweet to bite too has to offer. In that spirit, he has asked Pinkie Pie and I to help bring the audience up to speed since, arguably, we were the main characters of the previous story. Really? I thought it was the Kingdom Crusaders. Scooter, Apple Bloom, and Sweetie Belle played kind of big part. Or maybe Fluttershy was the only pony who, well, in the story that didn't actually, die. Pinkie Pie, no spoilers. Why not, Twilight? Isn't that what we're here for? Aren't we going to tell every pony what happened in the last story so they can be all caught up for the new one? Well, yes, actually, that is what we're here to do. But some pony might want to actually experience the first story before reading this one any further, or hearing it. If you feel that you'd enjoy the story more with the full background, we ask that you please exit the theater now. Don't worry though, since we are beyond the fourth wall, as Pinkie Pie phrases it, we'll still be here when you get back. Bizarrely, we'll also be moving forward now for those that choose not to leave. I've read hundreds of research papers on the subject of the temporal anomalies created by the phenomena alone. Twilight? Is the fact of observation that causes time to move forward in this context? Or would time continue to move, with or without the observer? Is it possible to perceive this chronological flux without being an outside observer? Twilight! Or does this reveal time just to be an artificial construct created by ponies to make sense of the laws and cause and effect? If these laws can be easily bent by the mere act of observation, does this create or nullify the paradox of Sorcerer's cat? Maybe there's a book back in the Canterlot archives that will. Twilight! What? Right. Sorry. Anyways, where was I? Oh, the story. Time is actually an important element of our tale. The first thing you should know, the story takes place along what you would call an alternate timeline. The first story was written before the airing of what, in your world, will be the final two episodes of season 2 of the My Little Pony cartoon show. As such, many of the events that happened in the show since then either never took place in our continuity or else occurred differently. For example, I am given to understand in your timeline I eventually became the Naricon princess. That unfortunately never occurred for us. And I never made a bunch of copies of myself using the mirror pool. Nope, never happened. That would be silly. Fun? Shh. What was that? Oh, nothing. Well, anyways, as a result, the story is actually taking place sometime between what you would call seasons. The second thing you should know is the story is tied up with the origins of the equestrian holiday known as Nightmare Night, which I have been informed by Pinkie Pie would be considered analogous to another holiday called All Hallows Eve. It's the writer's love for this holiday that was the basis of both the first story and the sequel. What you might not know, though, is that, in the context of this story, how old the traditions of Nightmare Night truly are. Once upon a time, the feast was held not out of fear to Nightmare Moon, but out of gratitude to Princess Luna. Over the years, after her banishment to the moon, when we started to forget what the traditions were for and what they originally represented, Nightmare Moon became a boogeyman that was used to playfully frighten fillies and colts. What started it all was a terrible tragedy that befell a little earth pony. It was an awful story, and I can see why some pony parents might like to make up another happier story to replace it. See, back in the old lands, before the different ponies came together and found Catchlot, there wasn't much trust between the different tribes. Of course, we eventually learned that it was only when we came together as friends that we could thrive as a society. Those initial distrustful impulses weren't completely unfounded. The pixies were warlike, looking for any excuse for a fight. The earth ponies were angry and discontent with the lot in life, having to toil in the lands for food. Then there were the unicorns, many of whom valued their own reflections more than the ponies who toiled and fought for them. One such unicorn was a real baddie with the name Lemon Drop. You out there could kind of think of him as a diabolical Willy Wonka. He did all sorts of heartless experiments on earth ponies because he thought no pony would miss them. What was worst is that he was mostly right. But one day of his experiments backfired on him, and instead of making candy for every pony to gobble up, the candy turned around and gobbled him up instead. Thus was born into the world the Candy Mare, a creature made from equal-powered confections and the tortured soul of a very damaged filly. This creature would be responsible for the disappearance and presumed deaths of countless ponies of the centuries. It was usually around the anniversary of her creation that she became the most active, and that night became known as Nightmare Night. Eventually, the passage of time made many think of her as nothing but an old pony's tale, but she still was greatly feared by all. It was Luna who would eventually enter a new reign of terror and banish her into the earth. In so doing, she not only freed her subjects from a very real threat, but also banished the terror that had hung over Nightmare Night itself. The annual evening had become an object of fear, was instead transformed into a feast to honor Luna and her bravery. But destroying the Candy Mare's body wasn't entirely enough to keep her down. What Luna had stuck was to put the Candy Mare / the spirit to sleep. Only by trapping her in dark dreams and forbidding the creation of certain old world candies could the Candy Mare banishment stay in effect. So ponies from all over Equestria gathered up the forbidden fruits and offered them to Luna for purification, which in this case really meant destruction. This would later become a traditional offering to statues of Luna in her guised Nightmare Moon, which I always thought was kind of weird. Why have statues of some pony every pony is afraid of, right? That was also weird, was how the King Mock Crusaders kinda completely ruined everything. They made a bunch of the forbidden sweets to try and cheat at the bet they had made with Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara. To be fair, no pony remembered that these old traditions of sacrificing candy to statues of Luna, wearing costumes, or keeping jack-o'-lanterns lit were meant to protect us from the Candy Mare. So that should have just been an instance of youthful ingenuity quickly snowballed into an episode of terror and death. Pinkie Pie, with her oddly suspicious knowledge of old legends and the contents of my library, what can I say? My grandpa liked to tell me stories and inspired me a love of reading. I also know how to use therapy, the canal system. Pinkie Pie suspected something bad would happen all along, and we acted how we thought best to neutralize the threat. Sadly, this wasn't before Apple Bloom and Applejack were killed. They were the first, but unfortunately not the last. In time, the entire town succumbed to a curse we hadn't anticipated. Nowhere had any pony said why the candy was forbidden to be made or eaten, just that it was so, and we assumed it was purely to keep the candy mare from coming back. Instead, it turned out the sweets were themselves cursed, and any pony who ate them would become a candy pony as well. Finding that out was kind of my bad. I thought that the only logical way to deal with candy was to, eat it. What faster way to make it disappear than gobbling it up? I don't know how to deal with cursed candy in our neck of the multiverse, but it seemed like an obvious solution for me. It didn't taste bad either, if it was being a little bloody. Yuck, Pinky, that's gross. Though I suppose that if the audience can't handle that, they probably shouldn't bother with either story. They both contain extreme violence and gore, and may not be appropriate for fillies and foals. While I'm quick to point out the intrinsic literary value of any story that is well written, even I'm not sure that Something Sweet Bite or its sequel hold any real literature value. Geez, Twilight, easy. It's just a fan fiction. It's not meant to be taken seriously. This is what I keep telling you. It's the same at my parties. You need to loosen up. Live a little. Shake your pony fang. Maybe, Pinky, maybe. I guess it's a little hard for me to remember that the stories aren't real sometimes. Anyways, all of Ponyville was eventually destroyed. To every pony outside of Ponyville, it was like the town and its populace just disappeared over the course of a single night. The only Ponyville resident left was one who hadn't been there that night. A rainbow-maned flyer who had been invited to a night party in Cloudsdale that the Wonderbolts were said to be attending. Our story follows her almost a year later, a new adventure that awaits her. New nightmare, more like it. Pinkie Pie, no spoilers.